Breaking news. You're looking at video of one of the last times Oscar winner, Gene Hackman, a known recluse in recent years. Now, with new details on the investigation to the death of actor Gene Hackman, including newly released video. As for the inside footage, Hackman's estate wants to block that release, citing privacy. Inside Gene Hackman's secret tunnel, the air is cold enough to see your breath. Stone walls sweat. The silence is total. No wind, no sound from above. Nothing except the drip of water somewhere deeper in the dark. Federal investigators had already found 2 bodies in the mansion above. They had cataloged a ransacked library, an open safe, furniture dragged across floors. They thought the worst was behind them. Then someone found the hidden passage behind the wall, and everything changed. Nobody on that property, not the staff, not the neighbors, not law enforcement, had any idea this tunnel existed. That is the fact that reframes everything else. Gene Hackman, one of the most celebrated actors in Hollywood, had built his entire life around keeping this secret buried. He almost succeeded. What investigators found at the bottom of those stone steps was never meant to surface, and what it reveals about who Gene Hackman really was, that part is only beginning. The breach, February 26th, 2025, 11 o'clock in the morning. A convoy of federal vehicles pulled up to reinforced steel gates hidden deep in the forest outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Behind those gates sat a $4 million compound, the private estate of Gene Hackman, 95-year-old Oscar-winning actor, and his wife Betsy Arakawa, 65. Nobody had seen or heard from either of them in days. No phone calls returned. No staff arriving for work. Complete silence from a property that under normal circumstances ran like a small military installation. Here's what nobody noticed at first. It was a handyman who raised the alarm. Not family, not a friend. A handyman who told deputies he believed the couple had died inside. The gates had to be forced, the locks cut, and that alone told agents something was deeply wrong. This wasn't a property where someone accidentally left a door open. Everything about this compound was engineered to stay sealed unless someone on the inside chose to open it. When officers entered, they expected something tragic but routine. I don't see any blunt force trauma. It's just strange that they would both be down, bro. An elderly couple, isolated, passing quietly in their final days. What they walked into was anything but routine. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were found dead inside the mansion alongside their dog. Authorities later confirmed Betsy had died roughly a week before Gene. Her cause of death: severe viral infection. His heart failure with contributing factors. Natural causes. Case closed on paper. But the scene didn't match the paperwork. Stop and think about what that means. The Santa Fe Sheriff's Department told the public from day one there were no signs of foul play. Standard language meant to put the story to bed. But in that same statement, they admitted the scene was suspicious, enough to require a full forensic search of the entire property. No foul play, but suspicious enough to bring in federal teams with thermal imaging and forensic specialists. Those two statements don't live in the same world, and the timeline raises questions nobody has answered. Betsy died a full week. Before Gene, 7 days. That means Hackman, a 95-year-old man, was alive in that house with his wife's body for up to a week alone. No call for help. No attempt to reach anyone Betsy Hackman was searching for before she died. And the first-person view of the officers as they found the couple dead at home. What keeps a man silent for 7 days in a house with a dead loved one? Fear, duty, or the knowledge that calling for help would mean letting strangers inside. And strangers would find what was underneath before this story goes any further. If even half of what investigators found beneath this estate turns out to be verified, this becomes one of the most disturbing discoveries tied to a celebrity death in modern American history. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time, because what comes next only gets darker. The fortress above. To understand what the FBI walked into underground, you have to understand what sat above it. Gene Hackman's estate wasn't a home. It was an installation. Dense forest on every side, towering stone walls around the perimeter, motion sensors at every access point, thermal cameras, 24-hour, surveillance rivaling government black. Sites, the staff were hand-picked, vetted, and bound by legal agreements so tight that not one of them ever spoke publicly about what went on inside those walls. Think about that for a second. Decades of employees, gardeners, housekeepers, maintenance workers, and not a single leak. In the age of social media, that kind of silence doesn't happen by accident. It's enforced. Building permit requests for the property came back redacted. Property records had gaps no clerk could explain. One researcher from the Santa Fe Historical Society spent months pulling land records on the estate and then simply stopped returning calls, never published. No one knows what she found or who told her to quit looking. Here's what nobody was ready for when they finally stepped past those gates. The interior was staggering. Hallways, lined with original masterpieces, furniture dating back centuries, chandeliers rumored to have hung in ancient palaces, gardens filled with botanical specimens so rare they exist in fewer than a dozen places on Earth. Dr. Elena Vasquez is an architectural historian at the University of New Mexico who later consulted on the property assessment. When she first reviewed the estate's layout, she went quiet. Then, I've documented estates all over the Southwest. This one was designed like a museum built inside a military compound. The beauty was real, but so were the countermeasures. That combination doesn't happen unless someone is protecting something specific. She was right. Body camera footage released after a judge's rare public ruling shows deputies entering the mansion. The silence is immediate and heavy, but what unsettled agents wasn't the quiet. It was the evidence that someone had been busy before they arrived. Furniture dragged across hardwood floors, books pulled from shelves and restacked wrong, drawers left ajar, a bedroom safe open and empty. Someone had been tearing through this house searching for something or hiding it. And then agents walked into the library, the descent. Behind a section of wall in Hackman's private library, concealed so precisely you could stand in that room 1,000 times and never notice. Federal agents found a hidden mechanism, not a bookcase, on a hinge, not a latch behind a painting. This was an engineered entry, point requiring a specific activation sequence. Whoever built it wanted it to be invisible to anyone who didn't already know it was there. Behind it, a narrow passageway, stone steps, descending into total blackness. No light source, no ventilation, just carved stone dropping straight down into the earth. The agents went down. The temperature dropped with every step. The air thickened, damp, metallic, carrying the taste of rust. Condensation clung to the walls. Their flashlight beams swept across the stone and landed on something that stopped the lead agent mid-step. And this is where it gets strange. The walls were covered in deliberate markings. Not graffiti, not decoration. Precise inscriptions carved with tools and intention, some resembling alchemical notation, others looking like technical blueprints for devices that shouldn't have existed in whatever era this tunnel was built. One section of wall featured what appeared to be a schematic for a machine with no modern equivalent. Gears, chambers, and conduits arranged in configurations that one forensic technician later described as engineering from nowhere. The construction itself told a story. Near the library entrance, the stonework was mid-20th century. Clean cuts, industrial material, poured concrete reinforcement. But the deeper the agents went, the rougher the walls became. Hand-carved joints, primitive reinforcement, tool marks from pick and chisel, not power tools. Marcus Devlin is a structural engineer who reviewed leaked photographs of the passage interior. He studied them for a long time, then set them down. This wasn't built by the homeowner, he said slowly. The upper section was renovated, modernized, reinforced. But the core of this tunnel was already here. Hackman moved into it. He inherited it. Then they reached the chamber. What was waiting? A vast underground space frozen in time. Ancient wooden crates stacked against the walls. Some had collapsed with age, spilling their contents across the stone floor. Yellow documents, rusted metallic objects, artifacts that didn't belong to any identifiable era. One agent lifted the lid of a dust-covered box and found photographs, fragile, curling at the edges. Faces no one recognized, dressed in clothing from a century past. Some photos showed clandestine meetings in windowless rooms. Others captured locations, buildings, underground spaces that don't correspond to any known place on record. In one image, a group of men stood around a table covered in maps, a single overhead bulb casting hard shadows across their faces. On the back of the photograph, someone had written a date, 1937, and a single word in a language that still hasn't been identified. Leather-bound files sat beside the photographs. Coded dates, redacted names, passages describing events deliberately erased from official records. Some pages had been partially burned. Someone tried to destroy them, then stopped. Other documents bore insignias linked to organizations that officially dissolved decades ago. The volume of material was staggering. Agents estimated it could take years to catalog everything in that chamber. The floor wasn't just dusty stone. It was marked with circular patterns. Intricate, deliberate designs that from above resembled celestial maps. Star charts carved into the ground by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Not random, not decorative. These patterns corresponded to specific astronomical alignments, constellations, planetary positions, orbital paths laid out with precision, requiring advanced mathematical knowledge. Whoever carved them wasn't guessing. They were mapping something, or marking it for someone who would come later and know how to read it. Here's what nobody noticed until the second team went through. The tools recovered from the crates were equally wrong. Engravings matching no known manufacturer or time period. Internal mechanisms so precise they would require fabrication technology that didn't exist when this tunnel was built. One device, a palm-sized metal cylinder with rotating internal rings, appeared to have no seams, no visible method of assembly, as if cast as a single piece. A feat current metallurgical techniques still struggle to replicate at that scale. Dr. James Whitfield spent 19 years as an FBI forensic analyst processing classified evidence before he retired. When he reviewed the publicly available details from this case, his voice shifted, got quieter. When an agency goes this quiet, this fast, it means one of two things, he said. Either they found nothing and they're embarrassed, or they found something so significant that the disclosure conversation has moved above the investigative team. I've seen both. This doesn't look like embarrassment. The ground beneath Santa Fe, the territory surrounding Hackman's estate, isn't just art galleries and desert sunsets. Los Alamos, birthplace of the atomic bomb, sits just down the road. The Manhattan Project nuclear testing, black-budget weapons research, all of it within driving distance of Hackman's front door. For decades, locals have talked about underground bunkers carved into the mesas, infrastructure built to shelter government elites if civilization collapsed. Freedom of information requests have confirmed that extensive underground construction took place here during the Cold War. How extensive? Still classified. Richard Payne is a retired Department of Energy consultant who worked on facility assessments in northern New Mexico during the 1990s. He chose his words carefully. There are systems under those mesas built to outlast the surface, he said. Some were decommissioned, some were sealed, some were simply forgotten, disconnected from every official record. Here's the detail that changes everything. The steel in that tunnel was military grade. The rivet spacing matched construction techniques from high-security government installations built in the 1950s. A wine cellar doesn't get built like a bank vault. A storage room doesn't get sealed from the inside, but a forgotten spur of a classified government network that changes the entire scale of what we're dealing with. To neighbors who noticed, the neighbors always felt something was wrong. Margaret Calloway owned the adjacent property for 22 years. She still talks about the sounds, low-frequency vibrations at 2 or 3 in the morning. Not plumbing, not heating, something industrial, deep. You felt it in your ribs, she said. She brought it up to Hackman once over the property line. He gave her a look she still thinks about. Some things are better left below the surface, he told her. She laughed it off at the time. She doesn't laugh anymore. A retired geologist named Frank Delqua, who lived 2 properties east, independently confirmed the vibrations. He set up a portable seismometer one summer. The readings didn't match any natural pattern, rhythmic, mechanical, something running down there on a schedule. He filed a noise complaint with the county in 2019. It was never followed up on. Others recalled unmarked trucks arriving after dark and leaving before dawn, faces hidden, no invoices, no logos, no trace. Former staff who left the estate simply vanished. Phones disconnected. Social media erased. One housekeeper who worked the property in the early 2000s told a friend before disappearing that she'd seen things she wasn't supposed to see. She never specified what. She was gone within the month. And get this, during renovations that first exposed the tunnel entrance, workers found a secondary communication system hardwired into the estate's walls. Not a phone line, not internet cable. A closed-circuit system connecting the main house directly to the underground chamber, wiring predating modern telecom by decades. But functional, maintained, operational. Someone had kept this line alive for years, communicating with whatever was down there on a channel that couldn't be monitored or intercepted. In a house already wired with state-of-the-art surveillance, this system was completely off the grid, a ghost line. Who was on the other end? The man who built the silence. Here's what people forget about Gene Hackman. Before the fortress, before the silence, before he vanished from public life entirely. He was one of the most genuinely warm presences in American film. Not warm in a performed celebrity way. Warm in the way that made strangers feel like they already knew him. His barber in Santa Fe told a local reporter that Hackman would come in every few weeks, sit in the same chair, and spend an hour talking about Hemingway novels and the Kansas weather he grew up. He tipped double. He remembered people's kids' names, their ages, their little league teams, whether they'd gotten into the school they wanted. At the local farmer's market, vendors knew him by sight. He'd buy green chilies in bulk and joke about his terrible Spanish. A local librarian recalled the way he'd linger after community events, genuinely interested in whatever conversation he'd stumbled into. Present, curious, in a way most people with his level of fame aren't. This was not a man built for isolation. Stop and think about what that means. People don't lock themselves away from a world they love unless something forces them to. The surveillance, the legal agreements, the silence of everyone who ever worked that property. The walls, the cameras, the sealed gates. He didn't build all of that because he was eccentric. He built it because something underneath his house required it. From the French Connection to Enemy of the State, Hackman spent his career playing men trapped inside conspiracies they couldn't escape. Men who knew too much. Men who built walls because the alternative was worse. Maybe that was never just acting. The official story is that he died of heart failure at 95. Plausible, but it doesn't explain why a couple with access to the finest healthcare in the world isolated themselves completely in their final days. No doctor calls, no emergency contacts, no staff on the premises. The alarm system was still active, but the internal cameras had been manually disabled. Two people alone in a fortress dying in silence while something sealed 40 feet beneath them held its breath. Here's the detail that haunts everyone who's touched this case. The tunnel entrance in the library wasn't sealed when agents found it. The mechanism had been activated recently. Gene Hackman, a man in his mid-90s, had gone down into that cold, damp passage not long before he died. Why? What was he checking? What was he afraid of? Or, and this is the question no one wants to ask out loud, was he hiding from something he knew had finally found him? The door, deep in the far wall of the chamber, past the crates and the scattered files and the star charts carved into the stone floor. The agent's flashlights found it. An iron door set into the rock, no handle on the outside, no hinges visible, just a corroded steel surface with weld marks along every seam, sealed from the inside by someone who never came back out. The lock wasn't designed to keep people from getting in. It was designed to keep something from getting out. Here's what nobody noticed until it was too late to ask Hackman about it. The FBI has said absolutely nothing publicly about what lies beyond that door. No official comment, no leak, no background briefing. In an era where classified documents end up on social media within hours, that level of containment requires active suppression, and that silence tells you more than any press conference ever could. FBI forensic teams are still down there, analyzing every artifact, every document, every symbol on those walls. Trace DNA, cryptographic decoding of inscriptions left by hands dead for generations, linguists, metallurgists, historians of pre-industrial engineering, astronomers interpreting the star maps on the chamber floor. Months have passed since the initial discovery. In any normal investigation, something leaks, preliminary findings, unnamed sources, a background briefing someone can't resist. In this case, nothing. The information locked down around that tunnel is tighter than anything surrounding the deaths themselves, which means whatever is down there isn't just historically significant. It's operationally sensitive. Someone decided the contents of that chamber are still dangerous enough to require full containment. Not in 1950, not during the Cold War, right now, today. Beneath the estates of the powerful, beneath the forests and the mountains and the quiet towns we think we know, there are doors that were never meant to be opened. Gene Hackman guarded one of those doors for decades. He built his entire life around it. The walls, the cameras, the silence, the legal agreements, the vanishing staff, the total isolation, an existence engineered to make sure no one ever found what was underneath. He carried that weight from the peak of his career to the final hours of his life, and now he's gone. The last person who knew every corridor of that tunnel, every crate in that chamber, every mark on those walls, gone. Whatever was behind that welded iron barrier 40 feet below his library is no longer his to protect. The question isn't whether the FBI knows what's down there. They do. The question is, what could be so dangerous, so fundamentally destabilizing, so threatening to everything we think we know, that they'd rather say absolutely nothing than tell the public what they found behind that door? Was Hackman the last guardian of something buried long before he was born? Or was he its final prisoner? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want to be here when the next piece of this story breaks, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.